The indie film. One. The only one.
The only one ever made.
The only one ever made. Never again was there another one. Never again will there be another one.
And not allowed.
Truly not allowed, and I also don't know. It's not true. I feel like it is definitely harder to make a film on the kind of budgets that we're dealing with here these days. But we'll talk about that. This is At the Movies. Welcome to season 3. If you're just joining us, we got a backlog, but we are covering indie films this season. I am your host, Mo, here with my co host. Hello.
What's going on, everybody? What's up?
And what's up? We usually do once per season. We kind of break the rules a little bit. So this season we were talking about indie films from the past decade or so. But what would be an independent film season if we didn't cover probably one of, if not the most important indie films of all time,
Yeah,
and that is Clerks.
I don't think we'd be doing a service to our listeners if we didn't cover Clerks during this season. I feel like it's almost a must.
I agree, and I think that personally, I can say that this movie uh, has impacted me. That sounds like it's like an emotional thing. It's not, but in terms of influence and in terms of just like a film I grew up with and a
Mm-hmm.
film that still, we'll get into this, like watching it. There's working on Ferret, for people who don't know, which is the short film that I'm writing. There are decisions that I was considering making that mirror this movie that I didn't even think about. I had no idea. It was just a subconscious thing, and it's because of how much this movie has stuck with me.
That's kind of how everything works. Like you're molded by the media that you consume, the movies that you watch, and now you're writing and your storytelling. That's what makes things kind of ever changing. But there's always something like attached to it that just kind of feels at home. Or
Yeah. Let's get so I'm going to lay out some facts real quick, and then I want to get into just reactions and how we feel, because for me, this is a movie that's been like Kevin Smith is a director that's been relatively present in my life since I was a teenager. And
Mhm.
I know that you said you've seen like all of his movies, but I think you mentioned to me that this was the first time that you had watched this in about a decade, probably.
Probably yeah, about 10 years, I bet.
So, and I'm really curious to see how your thoughts on the movie and how you remember it versus how you experienced it now. It
Hmm.
was made for $25,500. Um, and it was which is crazy, and that's more than the budget we're dealing with, but that's still very small.
Yeah.
And it was based on him selling a large portion of his comic books at the time, as well as maxing out 8 to 10 credit cards. um, he worked at the Quick Stop while they were filming. They filmed at night, which I think this is my favorite detail that I didn't know before today, or had forgotten. The whole plot point about the shutters not working is because they could only film at night while the store was closed. So all of the indoor scenes, they they turned it into an iconic moment with the sign, the I assure you we're open. Um, and it's just like a slice of life comedy drama. It's very of its time. It feels very 90s. It feels very nostalgic, which is part of the reason I love it so much. Um, it's got this kind of slacker, uh,
Hmm.
you know, iconography to it. These two, clerks that are just day job, like, and they're all. You've got Dante, who is kind of woe is me. My life is everything in my life sucks, and I how dare I take the action to change it? And then you've got Randall, who's this free spirited, rude. Kind of he at the end he serves him up like you're in control of your life. You
Yeah.
could quit tomorrow if you want to. There's a lot of things in this movie that I still relate to today. I was giving this some thought. I really think I'm a Dante and you're a Randall. I really
Oh
think
yeah.
that way.
Yeah, hundred
And I think
percent.
and I think that we could play that. Like if we were to do a sketch based on Clerks, I think I would play Dante. I think you'd play Randall.
Now,
Uh,
now later on in this podcast, I want to preface now when I say my feelings about Dante, don't take them as I'm
no,
directing them
I won't.
towards you, though. But
No,
yeah,
I
I
won't,
do
because
feel.
there are things I noticed, good and bad, about him that,
Mhm.
that are similar to the way I operate. And Geez, this is just such a like.
Yep,
I want to let you go for a while, but the one thing I'm gonna say before I really get into this is just that like some of it, some things may not hold up. Some like certain words or certain jokes might not hold up, but
it's
for
okay.
me,
They weren't meant
for
in the
my
context of harming anybody,
right,
so I would say it'd be not that they're okay to use. I'm not saying that, but okay in the sense of like back then.
yeah, well, and then the other thing I would just say is just I'm not saying that this is a perfect film for everyone, but for me, as a film that I grew up with, and something that I rewatch once every few years, this is like a Mo must see. This is a perfect film for me. This is like a 5 star. Uh, it is not like actually a 5 star film, maybe in some respects, but for me, it feels that way. I love this movie, and I can't say enough
Yeah.
about how much it resonates with me.
Yep.
So, with that being said, tell me how you remembered Clerks. If you remember anything about the first time you saw it, or how you
Oh
felt
yeah,
about it
man.
versus now.
It's kind of crazy. Just back to our earlier point when you said that you're like, if we were to play these characters, I would play Randall, you would play Dante. It's funny how like we could definitely like see ourselves like doing these roles, which is cool. But back when I watched it, probably about maybe not 10 years ago, but definitely longer than five, somewhere in between 5 and 10 years ago is the last time I watched it. Not the first time I watched it, but the last time I watched it. And I remember seeing them from the lens of being younger than them. So I was just
Right,
like,
right.
oh, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Like they're just going about life. And now being 8 years older than them, like not like looking as a 30-year-old, looking back at a 22-year-old, and then having him act like Dante. Oh my God, some of the things that he would do that were just drove me nuts. Like his just desire to just break up with Veronica. I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's
Right.
like you have everything going for you. You have such a great good. You want to go back to the girl that was cheating on you? It just speaks to like some like life lessons I've learned over like since I watched it last till now. Like some things that have happened in my
Yeah.
life that are kind of similar to that. Like you give up something good for something unknown, or like you want to go back to it or something like that. It's just like I feel that, and it was kind of made me uneasy at times because I was like, oh, don't do it, don't do it. But I would have to say that Clerks, when I first watched it, this is originally probably one of, I would say, top five influential films of why I want to be a filmmaker and why I want to make movies and make content now. Clerks is, if not number one, it's definitely top three for sure in that top five list of like the films that really made me desire to go after this thing that we're doing. And I just absolutely love Kevin Smith. I love everything he does. I like him as a person. He's such like a huge, like just lovable nerd
Yeah.
that is like I like anything he does. I watched. I don't know if you're familiar with Comic Book Men.
I am, but I have not watched it.
Yep.
Um, the reason I'm looking off screen, by the way, I am listening, but I actually have a list of my personal top 20 films that I made earlier this year based on rewatches and things that when we started doing this, it just reminded me when you said, movies that made us want to be a filmmaker. Clerks is right there in my top 10.
Yeah.
I
No,
was
it
just looking to
definitely.
see where it was in the list.
I think it'd be now. I think if you I think there's two probably classes in this. There's the filmmakers that like we're trying to do, like we're trying to be like our own, kind of build up. So these movies will be influential to us, but I'm wondering like these people that have like just went over to like LA and like went in and just transplanted themselves into the Hollywood scene. I don't know if this is the type of film that they would be like, this is what made me want to do this. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
I
kind of like
agree.
interesting to think like I think more of like these like low budget like production houses that get made kind of like what we're doing the studio thing, building it from the ground up. These movies, these low budget kind of grainy films about just an everyday life, just I think it sticks with us a little bit more than somebody that like maybe went to like film school and then went off to like LA and Hollywood and then worked their way up in the scene. I'm interested, and if anybody listening to this is that person, let me know if Clerks was or wasn't something that made you want to go and do film.
Something that feels kind of art house about it. Definitely, and I mean more than I remember a lot of times. Like this time in particular, this was one of the things that I was initially when I was working on Ferret, I had restructured the way that I had it written, so that it was introducing the characters separately. And one of the first title cards we see in this is just Dante, and I realized that that's exactly what I was thinking of, even though it was like a subconscious thing, was this idea to bring the characters in kind of one by one.
Yeah.
Um, and like the black and white of it was another thing that I was considering for Ferret for a while, just as like an aesthetic choice. And that probably won't happen, but it's just funny that that's something I didn't even think about Clerks when
It's
I was thinking
interesting.
about that.
When you first brought up the idea that you wanted to make, or that you were thinking about making Ferret black and white, I was like so against it. I was like, I don't think we should do that. And then I saw this and I was like, ah, you know what? Maybe.
This looks like, well, and the thing is too, it's because it's not digital black and white. It's not filmed digitally. You can tell that it's grainy. It really has the feel of like it feels exactly the way it was made, which is somebody uh, finding as much money as they can, which is like not that much, getting their friends and non-actors together, filming a movie at the place they work at night. I read that the one of the facts that I read was that he was getting as little as an hour's sleep a night, and by the end of production, they shot it in 21 days with 2 pickup days, 21 days straight, and by the end of it, he was unable to stay awake while they were filming some of the scenes. And it doesn't feel that way in a bad way, but it feels like when they say like musicians are hungry because they are just getting started, and they have this fire in them and they want to prove that they can do it. That's how this movie feels. It feels like a bunch of people getting together and doing something fun that they believe in,
Yeah.
creating a project that's not a they have no idea whether this is going to succeed or not, but they're doing
Yep.
it,
And it's kind of cool too, like seeing like now in the like them kind of sticking together. I think is cool. Like this whole group of this cast kind of like plus or minus one here or there, like seeing them stick God together is really exciting and kind of gives you hope for doing this. It's like doing this now, but looking back, it's so much easier to shoot a movie now than it was back in 1994. Like we even saw that with American Movie. Like cuz like if like you really wanted to now, you could film a feature from your iPhone. If you really wanted to, you could film a movie from your iPhone if you really
Steven
wanted to.
Soder Steven Soderbergh's Unsane, the psychological thriller that was, I think it was like 2019, filmed on an iPhone in order to give the movie this like claustrophobic kind of feel.
Mm,
So like even professionals are playing with the medium, and it does make me a little concerned. Like it almost makes me a little concerned in the sense that it's easier to play the game. So like you have to find a different way now for your film to stand out from 100 others that might be, being put together on the same budget or with the same technology.
oh, yeah,
That's the
100%.
challenge
I
now.
think that's what anything you do nowadays. It's since it's easier to do it, more people are doing it, but less people are like I guess like really like devoted to it. Like people are just like trying it, they're dipping their toes in as far as like doing stuff. They're not really as like serious. I mean, we went all the way on one side. We were like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna make a actual business out of it, we're gonna make a company, we're gonna eventually hire people. Like we like kind of laid down the blocks instead of like we weren't like, hey, we have an iPhone, let's run around all day and see what we can do. We kind of like, or I think a lot of people are doing, which isn't there's nothing wrong with that, but
No, but it's a distribution thing too. It's access to the internet because Clerks had to be picked up by someone to by
exactly.
Miramax and by the disgraced Weinstein brothers, whom by the way, after all of that happened, Kevin Smith did donate. I believe he continues to donate all proceeds from his Miramax films, um, based on what happened, uh, which is good and cool, because they were a pillar of his success, and he didn't know what was happening, but I can only imagine that it sucks to feel like part of your artistic legacy is tied to this shitty situation. Um,
Yeah, I can see that.
but regardless, now anybody can film something on their iPhone, but not only that, they can upload it to YouTube or Vimeo, or so there's so much more content out there that again it's our challenge as a new generation of filmmakers to really put out quality work, and to figure out like how to make that stand out in a sea
Mm-hmm.
of similar work.
100%.
But
What was
All
your
that being
favorite?
said,
What was your favorite part of this film? You can only pick one. Your favorite part.
I I texted you. I laughed out loud at it's then this is a microcosm of what I love about the movie. Totally is the writing is so sharp and so funny that the it's like they have this argument. Dante has an argument with his girlfriend. She finds out that he slept with 12 women and she's only slept with 3 guys. But then he finds out that she has gone down on 36 guys in her time, and he's off the wall about it, and he's being a jerk, and he's freaking out. And a guy comes into the shop, and he's like, 36 dicks. Can you believe it? My girlfriend sucked 36 dicks. And the guy just goes, in a row? And then it just cuts to the next scene. Like, that's the whole joke, is just
Yeah,
this random bystander who probably had one line in the movie just being like, in a row? That's so funny to me, and it made me laugh out loud.
yeah, that is a really good scene. I think it's funny though because it's like that's one of the things that kind of like makes me uneasy about Dante is like he was so mad about that, and like she's bringing him a lasagna to work and like treating him just like royalty, like just giving him everything he wants, and then he's like, I can't believe this, but yet his other girlfriend there, cheated on him 8.5 times.
right. And eight and a half times. It really is a thing too, where I will say, like, and not that Dante and Randall aren't likable, because I do think that they're meant to be like, they are. I like Dante and Randall, whether I'm supposed to or not, but the point is that Dante is overreacting. Like, the stuff he says, as a teen boy, there's a good chance I probably laughed at that stuff and was like, haha, like, he's right. Like, but now you watch it as an adult and you clearly understand, like,
Yeah,
oh, he's off the handle.
yeah, it's
He's
not
totally in
right.
the wrong here.
That's exactly
Right.
what I was talking about when I texted you. I was like, I'm definitely viewing the story a little bit different because when I was like younger and watching this, I was like, yeah, 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 this is great. Like this is then I'm like, no, no. Now I'm like, no, 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 Dante,
I
no.
I don't even know. I don't know how you feel about this too. I have no idea. I have this thing where I have a hard time picturing myself as my age. So like when I see another 26-year-old, a lot of times I feel like I don't look like I'm 26 years old. And maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's just me feeling like child or not feeling like I know what to do as an adult a lot of the time. But I remember watching this like a couple of years ago when I was working at a Dollar General, managing a Dollar General in Pittsburgh, and also not remembering they said that they were 22. And when that line happened, I was like 24, and I remember just being like, "Oh my god, like they're they're supposed to be 22 in this and I'm 24. Like, is this, am
Hmm.
I an adult? Am I not an adult? Is this my life? I feel like they look older than me, but maybe not. I don't know. It was just such a bizarre thing, and part of, maybe we'll talk a little bit about Clerks 2 real quick, is, and I don't know, I think you said you've seen most of his films, so you've probably seen it, but I just really love that they commit to, as any good sequel should, following these characters through, like, logically what their life would be like. Clerks 2 focuses on them in their 30s, and it is a complete logical, like, what would Randall be doing at 30, or what would his attitude
I
be?
really got
Where
to
would Dante
rewatch that
be?
again. I got to watch that again now that I'm 30. I bet you I look at that. I have to. I'm probably gonna watch it tonight. I think I like.
Dude, hey, we could do a
Yeah.
special on it or
I
something. We
feel
could
like
do we
I
could do
feel
an
like I
episode
need
about
to.
it.
I feel like since this one was so like I watched it when I was younger than their age in the film, and now I watched it when I was older, and I look at it differently. I wonder now, being their age in Clerks too. I wonder how different I would look at it.
You heard it here first, folks. Look out on the feed. I'm not going to say when, because we have a filming weekend coming up, and we'll have to figure out the logistics. It'll probably just be a random ep, like a one-off. But stay tuned for a bonus episode on Clerks 2. I say we just go for it.
Yeah, hell yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, I'm gonna watch it tonight, definitely.
Um, I just, yeah, like you said earlier, these characters, just the fact that this group has stuck together for Clerks 2. I know the actor that plays Randall, Jeffrey, he was like almost not on board for Clerks 2, and then he did it, and I'm so glad he did. And he was almost not on board for Clerks 3, and he's doing that as well. And it feels like a very, because like I said, this is of its time. It's very 90s, and Clerks 2. Similarly, probably some things that are relatively crass for today, but it still gives me that warmth and nostalgia. Um, I rewatched that around the same time I rewatched Clerks, and I love that movie just a little bit less, but I mean it's right up there with this one.
I'm kind
So
of wondering why. Do you know why Jeff there didn't want to do like Clerks 2 and Clerks 3? Like, why was he on the fence about it?
I don't. If I remember correctly, he felt like he didn't really want it to like define him, and I also feel like he was prior to Clerks a non-actor, and I know he did some acting after Clerks.
Yeah.
But again, I think he maybe didn't want to be defined by this. I mean, that's the other, the thing about this movie, offensive stuff aside, the stuff that we were talking about, it also does feel like to me, which is very fun and it's interesting, is that I grew up loving like Seth Rogen movies. That was a little more my time, obviously. Seeing like Knocked Up and The 40-Year-Old Virgin and Superbad, and it feels like those movies and that style of humor, the super dialogue heavy, crass, sexual, crude humor, um, wouldn't have happened without this movie happening. This feels like maybe the first instance of that. In fact, it
I
almost got an
agree.
NC-17. It almost got an NC-17 just based on dialogue alone. Because
Really?
obviously there's no nudity in the movie. There's no violence or anything. It almost got an NC-17, and then they hired another infamous bad guy, not Kevin Smith, but the Weinsteins hired another infamous bad guy, famed Epstein plane flyer, Alan Dershowitz, to defend the film and get it an R rating. Thank you for your one good deed, Alan Dershowitz. Now crawl back into your hole, you goblin. Um, anyways, uh, but yeah, it almost got an NC-17, and it is. But some of those jokes, I mean, again, it's like also the joke isn't always. Uh, it's not just like, oh, he said like come a bunch or whatever. Like the one of my favorite bits in it is the joke of him ordering all of the porno titles while there's just like a mother
With their
standing
kid?
there waiting.
Yeah, with their
Yeah,
kid.
just patiently waiting, and the bit's not. I mean, the titles are obviously it's like funny that he's reading off these titles, but the joke being that she just has to stand there the whole time and deal with it until he gets to the end of the list, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, and what tape did you want again?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was
It's
like a
like, yeah,
children's
the
tape
kids film.
title.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite scenes. I like Randall. Some of my favorite scenes involve him just like so like that one and the one where he was like, I know I work at a video store, but I want to go to a good one.
Yeah, yeah. I thought the writing really than anything stood out. I mean, I think the film acting is good for being non-actors. Like I think
Yeah.
the acting is solid. I think the direction is solid as well for being Kevin Smith's debut. But the writing is really what stands out to me. The fact that not much happens in this movie, but it holds your attention for its runtime, based on just conversations. A lot of times between two or three characters.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing I noticed, like a great style or trait that Kevin Smith has, just like Dante holding like multiple conversations happening at once. So like when the guy comes in to give him his fine, and he keeps having to go back and forth between the guy who's dishing out this fine, and then going back and forth with like the bodybuilder guy who keeps saying he's out of shape, and the girl that's there to pick him up, and then it's
You're Rick
it's just
Darrison?
yeah, yeah, and them him being like, I didn't sell any cigarettes to any kids because Randall sold cigarettes to a kid while he was out of the store, and he keeps saying that, and like nobody's listening to him. The people at the counter are like, "Man, you sold cigarettes to a 4-year-old? That's sick, man." And he's like, "I didn't do." Like, it's great. There's a Simpsons quality to it, to the writing, especially like the misdirection. There's a part where he's the light bulbs. He's taking care of the light bulbs, and the guy's like, "Hey, those will give you cancer." I had a friend that used to eat glass in the circus, and he's like, "Oh, he got cancer from one of these." He's like, "No, hit by a truck." And that's the joke. Is just that it's really really great. I
The
obviously am over the moon about this movie.
the one part is when he's talking to the older gentleman that's trying to use the bathroom, And it's like it just gets like progressively weirder. He's like, you know, me in my old age, I'm just incontinent. He's like, yeah, sure. And then he's like, can I get the good toilet paper? And he's like, I guess. And he's like, one more thing. Can I get the porno?
Yeah, can I get something to read? And it's great because it's one shot centered on Dante, like on the left hand side of the screen, or not centered. But then the old man keeps leaving and coming back like a minute later. There are some really good directorial moments in this, and like the shots look good. It feels like an iconic movie that I think deserves the reputation it has to me.
Yeah,
Um,
you know what's interesting? I've never, and maybe because I don't even want to hear somebody say it, but I haven't really heard anybody say they don't like Clerks. Maybe they haven't seen it, but like most of the people I talk to about it are like, "Oh, that's an iconic film," or "That's one of my top films." I never really hear anybody talking bad about it, and I don't
I
want
think a
to
lot
either.
of and we don't want to hear it. So all you haters out there, all you Kevin Smith haters, no, I think that what I hear more often than not is that Kevin Smith has maybe over time by doing the same. You know, when I saw Jane Silent Bob reboot, I wrote a review on Letterboxd, and I stand by this. I think that being a Kevin Smith fan is like kind of like being a Weezer fan, where they're like some classics at the beginning, and as time goes on, loses its luster a little bit, and then maybe there are some far misses, some really not great stuff. But every once in a while, a movie like Jane Silent Bob reboot, which I've only seen once, and that I can admit is like not a great movie, but for a fan of Kevin Smith, someone like me, there's still enough heart in it, and there's enough of that DNA of Clerks, that warmth, that I'm always going to see a new Kevin Smith movie. I know what to expect at this point. He does a lot of the same things. I don't think he's a bad director. I don't think he's necessarily an amazing director, but I think he's earned his reputation. And if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But for people like me who like his movies, I think that he keeps making things that are at least worth coming back to, or checking out, you know?
This is so weird that you say that because Kevin Smith is like the Weezer of film, and I love them both. So like
Oh,
that,
yeah. We both love Weezer and we both love Kevin Smith. So
so
this is
like
not a detriment at all.
no, just like it's funny to like think about that. Like, yeah, no, the way that Kevin Smith like feels about movies and comics is like almost parallel to the way that Rivers thinks about like music and writing. So it's interesting.
You get to a point where it's the not cool, like it's not hip anymore, it's not the 90s anymore, so
Mm,
like Kevin Smith is not a hip film director anymore. And if you tell people, I think telling people you like Clerks is different than telling people you're a Kevin Smith fan. I
yeah,
think it's the same thing as telling a Weezer, or telling somebody, oh, I love the Blue Album. But if you tell somebody like I'm a Weezer fan, they're like, okay. Like, really though? Like, you like all of it? And for me, I'm like, yes, I do. And the same with
every single song, I love them all.
the same with Kevin Smith. I Even the bad stuff is good to me because it is comforting and familiar and nostalgic. And I'm perfectly willing to say, that he has made some stinkers, or not some winners, but like for me, they work. They
Yeah,
just
no, I agree.
feels feels like visiting an old friend when you watch a Kevin Smith movie.
It does. It kind of. I think that's one of the similarities that me and you have is whether it's through music or film, we're gonna side more on the things that like bring us to a place of like our youth or bring us like back like grounded almost. Like it's got that kind of like nostalgia feel to it.
Agree. Did you read about the original ending of this film?
Mm-mm.
The original ending, uh, Randall leaves the store, and another customer comes in, and Dante says like we're closed, and he like doesn't look up. He's counting the register, and somebody shoots him. He dies, and the ending of the film is him dying on the floor. While Kevin Smith, Silent Bob, comes in, sees that there's like nobody there because he's like dying on the floor behind the counter, and he steals some cigarettes. And the film ends with the camera just on Dante's face while the credits start to roll. And the idea, Kevin Smith said he did it for three reasons. One was irony. Um, I'm not even supposed to be here today, and then he ends up,
It's the uncut gems ending.
It truly is the original Uncut Gems ending. He also said he didn't know how to end a movie, And I have not watched the original ending. I don't know how that. I can imagine that it probably wouldn't fare as well. And we also wouldn't have gotten Clerks 2. He said there's a chance that he might never have made another like View Askew movie after that if he had ended like that. So thankfully, he was talked out of it. But it's interesting because they talk earlier in the movie about Empire Strikes Back, and that's what life is. It's a series of downbeat endings, and that was also kind of like a
Like a
nod to that.
foreshadow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad they
But
didn't. Don't kill your
yeah.
characters, ladies, unless you absolutely have to, or it's your third film. Kill them. But other than that, like,
Or it's your third. Oh God, Clerks 3 is gonna be a massacre.
they're like, why are they all dying?
They're gonna bring the people from Tusk into the Clerks universe.
Yeah,
In Clerks 3.
they're gonna bring John Cena into it. John Cena's gonna be in Clerks
Oh
3.
no. Oh, hate it. I also love that he goes back to New Jersey for a lot of this. The Clerks 3 is filming right now in New Jersey at the Quick Stop.
Oh,
Which is
Tyler lives next to that comic book shop that he runs.
really
Yeah, we were.
awesome.
I don't know why we didn't visit it. I don't think he lives close, but I think it's like a decent drive, maybe within an hour or something. But yeah,
Right.
I'm
right.
sure. I'm sure after he watches this, he'll comment and be like, "Yeah, I live close to it." So, favorite moment would be them playing hockey up on. I don't know why, but it's just like it's like
Another
that. It's
one.
that whole like scene of him being like, "Can I get like a Gatorade?" And Dante's like, "If you get a Gatorade, everybody wants a Gatorade." And Randall's like, "Oh, come on, just give him a Gatorade. Like this is where you're drawing the line." He's like, "Fine, get a Gatorade." Then they go upstairs. They go to the roof. They start playing hockey. That guy comes up. He's like, "You suck, man." They go. The ball gets thrown off, and he's like, "You only brought one ball." They go back down, and he goes, "Can I get a drink?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." You're like, "You're all out of Gatorade." It was just like a
Yeah,
whole.
it's
It's like a whole
a
circle
long
of a
con.
joke, and I was like, "That."
Right.
Oh, it just that part made me so happy. I was like, "It's so funny."
It's another one of my favorite jokes in this. It really is. The jokes for me are in the dialogue of just like how random people act. Um, that guy being one of them. When he comes up, he goes up because he's mad that the store is not open. He's like, "Come on, like what are you running here? Come on, like the store. Just come down and open the store." And then he's like, "Oh, this guy can't even pass," and he like immediately just gets sucked into the game that's happening on the roof. Like that's so funny to me. I think that there's
Oh, if they were able to wait, so now I'm actually wondering if they were able to film this. Was the whole reason why it's in black and white is because they had to film it at night?
I don't think that they no, I don't think that they like did any reverse shots or anything where there was like I think the all of the indoor shooting I think was done at night. But I do think the daytime stuff is like in the daytime and they probably just
Oh,
had
okay.
to work out a day for it or something. It said something about 21 days plus 2 pickup days, so maybe there was a weekend where he convinced his manager to let him film on the roof or something. I don't know. It's another reason it's so great is just to have it's like a sitcom. You have a closed set. I mean, you have one movie taking place in one okay. There's the video store, the convenience
Yeah.
store. There's
Every
the scene on the roof, and
every
then there's the driving. That's it.
yeah, and that works out so well. Like when you're just contained to one set, like The Room by Tommy Wiseau, like that worked out really well too. So like when you have these
Yeah, notoriously, it's so good. Who could be mad about that?
opposite ends of the movie spectrum for sure.
Somebody who hates Clerks but loves the room.
I'd fight him. I don't even care. I'd go to jail if somebody came up to me.
Swing on him.
I'd be like, "Bah."
Don't talk on my boy Kevin. No, I don't know how much there is to really say, about this more. It really is to me. There are, I think we've talked about this before. There's albums that I listen to that I love because I feel like I could have made them, which sounds very egotistical, but what I mean is that like it is within the, if I'm listening to a Kanye West record, which I love, I'm not like, oh, I could have done this in my garage. But if I'm listening to like the Blue album, I'm like, oh, this is like 10 power pop songs that all have 3 or 4 chords, and it sounds like kind of, pretty around the edges. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing when I watch this. It feels relatable to the point where I'm like, man, like feels like me. It feels like somebody who has a dream to do this thing and they're hungry and they're going to do whatever it takes to get it done. that makes me feel like I could make something like Clerks, and that's why I love it so much. That's why it really sticks with me.
Yeah, I think, just to go circle back on an earlier point that I made, it just the reason why it sticks with me, and I think it's going to, like, it didn't make me feel any less the more I watch it. Like, this being, I think, probably the third time I've seen it, like, it didn't lose anything. If anything, it really like cemented the fact that this movie was extremely influential in putting me on this path that I am now. For sure. For sure.
I think outside of it being a '90s film too, it really captures what it feels like to have a job like that, especially around that age. Um,
Mhm.
even when I was in Pittsburgh, which was only 2 3 years ago, having a job at that age and being a early 20s and having like a dead end job like that, you get to a point where you do have these existential thoughts about like, does what I do matter? Does it need to matter? Like as Dante says, he's like, I'm not the kind of person to disrupt something so I can shit comfortably.
No.
You get complacent and you also stop to care as much. And there's all these it's very rooted in realism, and people who work in a job like that will notice, like, they talk about the weird egg guy, they talk about the weird milk lady, and you get customers like this in a job like that. It's all rooted in
Mhm.
real experience, and it feels very genuine, I think.
100%, man. Yeah, no, I think we've talked that there's, what is there really else to say? It's a great film. We enjoyed it.
Go watch it. Like I said, this is not everyone. Not everyone is gonna love this as much as we do. But like it is worth watching for film history alone. And if you enjoy it on top of that, God bless you, because it's just one of my favorites
Mhm.
personally. It's a 5-star film for me. And it just brings it brings a smile to my face when I'm having a bad day. It's something I think I could throw on anytime and enjoy. So definitely go watch Clerks and keep an eye out. We will do an episode on Clerks 2, and eventually when it comes out, we'll do an after the movies on Clerks 3.
Yeah, and
So
Aaron, wouldn't it be nice if we had some kind of like program set aside where people could talk about these movies as if we were watching them? Wouldn't that be so cool if we had
man,
something that
I think I would love for that to happen, but it just seems like it's impossible. Psych.
it's possible, ladies and gentlemen. It's possible. And you can
It's
join
possible.
our Patreon members. Shout out to our Patreon members, Jay Irvin and Dylan Painter. Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys. So thank you for making this possible. If you'd like to join them, head on over to patreon.com/Lomo Media and select from the many tiers that we have offering a variety of different benefits. But our lowest tier lets you talk to us while we watch these films for $3
And
a
you can
month.
watch, yeah, not only talk to us, we're not the gatekeepers of movies, but you can watch the films alongside of us and you can just talk to us about them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like you're just tuning in to hear our thoughts or anything. You can watch, we can figure out a time that works and we'll watch these movies together and we'll
Yep.
just shoot quotes back and forth and talk about what we like and what we don't like. And yeah, we would love for more people to be able to take advantage of that. In a time where human connection is maybe getting easier, maybe not, but still difficult. The one thing that we can all do together is watch movies over the internet. God
Yep.
bless the internet. No
That's it.
mistakes made on the internet.
Nope, none. It's a perfectly beautiful system. Just like this episode and our podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Yes, and next week we are going to be watching Jimmy or Lowe is going to be in town, coming to, as Ludacris says, my house. Terrible, awful. Cut it. Leave it
Mm-hmm.
in. I don't care. Lowe's going to be here. We're going to be watching another movie, a director that we've already covered. It is Chris LaMartina, Call Girl of Cthulhu, the follow up to WNUF Halloween Special, a more conventional narrative film, opposed to the how different WNUF Halloween Special is, but a fun watch nonetheless. This one might be a little hard to find, folks, but if you do some digging, I'm sure that it's somewhere on the internet for you to rent. So we're going to be talking about that. Tune in. Our last WNUF episode did really, really well. It's actually in our top 3 episodes, so I have high hopes for this one too.
Nice. And also, not only we have another podcast coming out after the movies this Thursday, and about almost a day and a half from watching this, you can watch our take on the Suicide Squad. Not to be confused by. Wait, I did that. Yep, not to be confused by Suicide Squad.
With not to be confused with Daryl Ayer's Suicide Squad. We watched James Gunn's The Suicide
Mhm.
Squad. Although I have seen Suicide Squad, and I'm sure that you'll get a little bit of that too. So
I think that you're definitely not going to want to miss that episode because I have a lot to say. So
I think you're definitely not going to want to watch Suicide Squad. So make sure you watch The Suicide Squad. make sure you're watching the right film, folks. Um, Great episode. I'm beaming. I'm just so happy that I watched that movie. Like it's a Monday. I had to work today. I'm working extra every day today so that I can take Friday off and visit Buffalo with my girlfriend, and then have Lo and our third partner over to do some filming, and end my day by just getting to watch Clerks. It put a smile on my face and getting to talk about it. I hope people who haven't seen the movie enjoy it.
me too.
Really.
Busy week ahead of us here at Lomo, but that's it.
All right, I think that about wraps it.
Yeah. See you
See
later,
you on the next
everybody.
one, folks.